When you are in this world of creating things, you have to love the process of creating it. There are people that will like what you do, and those people will find you if you continue to do it. And I think whatever you make, when you put yourself into it, then that just is more true, and your real people follow you and find you.
Hello, I'm Tammy Hahnemann, a maker, digital content creator, and someone who works in many different mediums. I'm also really passionate about helping others find their creative spark, learn a new technique, or just make something pretty. Each week, I'll be joined by an incredible guest, someone who has navigated the winding roads of creativity and emerged on the other side. And they have wisdom, insights, and a whole lot of inspiration to share. If you found us, chances are you're on a quest for creative inspiration. Maybe you're feeling stuck in an artistic rut, dreaming of turning your passion into a flourishing business, or maybe you're hoping to see your work in print or grow your online presence. Well, wherever you are in your journey, you're in the right place. Heart and Hands of a Maker is your backstage pass to a live workshop-style conversation where we uncover the heart and hands behind the creative process. So if you're ready, let's get to it. Today, we're talking with Ann Tudor, a lampworker and knitter among many other talents. We'll be discussing all the twists in her creative journey, explore her business evolution, and hear what she has coming up. It is extremely exciting. Wait till you hear. It's time to grab your favorite beverage, settle into your creative space, and for us to meet Ann. Welcome to the show, Ann. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. It is, I'm honored to be here.
I'm so glad to have you.
I'm very excited for this. For your podcast and all the knowledge that you have to impart to everyone.
Oh, well, I can't thank you enough for jumping in and being a part of this and just being so willing to share so much of your journey with everybody else so they can learn from all that you've experienced and all of your trials and tribulations and twists and turns, really. Because I've so enjoyed getting to know you, and I've really enjoyed seeing your work as I explore, more and more and more of all the things you do, and your creative ability is just off the charts. I'm just continually in awe of all that you have done and all that I know you have coming up. And there's just so many layers. So I was hoping that you could just give an overview of, a little bit about where you started and how you got to where you are, and then we'll get even deeper. So please take it away.
Sure. Thank you so much for those kind words. That's I've been making things for a very long time. Starting out with my parents they're no longer with us, but my dad used to restore antique cars, and my mother was an artist of her own right. She did oil paintings, and she did a lot of handcraft things, as well as she was a very talented sewer. She did tailoring. And that my mother's whole side of the family, they were all makers or musicians, all sorts of creative things. So it's just kind of things that we did. So when I was a kid, I was way into Girl Scouts and all the crafts. And then as a young adult, I did a lot of scrapbooking and cross stitch. I've made paper, bookbinding. I worked with polymer clay, all those things. So I was very adept with using my hands. And in the early, the 80s or something? Date myself. When I started working, I worked for an orthodontist. Was in the dental field, and I used to bend wire for him, make all the appliances, retainers and things like that. So when, like in the early 2000s, probably late 90s, the wire wrap jewelry came out, into fashion. I was like, I do this every day. I can do this. So I started with jewelry. Actually, I made so much and I was just giving it away. And then my husband said, you really can't make all this stuff and just give it away. So I was like, okay. So I started selling a little bit here and there, and all this time since, well, probably 1990, I'd been knitting also through all this. So I was always making things. So, and then from the wrapped jewelry, I got into using gemstones and semi-precious gemstones and sterling silver and making all that kind of jewelry. And then I decided that I wanted to use lampwork glass beads, but I didn't want to pay for them. So what do? You make them. So it was probably 2005. I think was when I started working with glass.
Glass is one of those things I feel is so captivating. It's the color, it's the technique, it's the fire. You use a torch. For anybody who's not familiar with lamp working, it involves gas, a torch, a fire,
Yeah.
and then you're melting things. So it takes a lot of coordination. I find glass to be so alluring, like it just pulls you in. So I'm not surprised, and I totally get the need to want to try to be economic in making your finished piece be something that also incorporates your own work.
Well, I first took a very quick little 1 or 2 hour course on how to make a basic bead with a MAP gas torch and they call it a hothead torch. And so at the class, you had a mandrel, which is a metal stick, and then rods of colored glass, and you would wrap it around. You would heat the glass, melt it, wrap it around the stick, and make a bead. And you think that's not going to be that hard. It is hard. But then I got consumed, was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And you're working against the heat of the melt. You're working against gravity. So you have to make sure you spin your mandrel all the time, or else the glass will just droop off. If it gets too cold, it'll break. And so there was a lot of things with it. And then I thought, okay, I get this now, but I want to take this further. So I made lots of just plain beads, and I sold them to other jewelers because it was just an easy thing for me to do, and I could do it fairly quickly. But it does kind of consume you, because the thing is also when you start working with glass, and I believe it's the same with ceramics, you can spend an hour on a bead, and if it is not annealed properly, which means it's put in a kiln, and what that does, it makes it stronger and more durable. But if it cools too quickly or you don't get in the kiln at any time, those could just shatter. So, and then here's an hour's worth of work and you have nothing. And you can't reuse that glass. So you learn how to let go of some things, and not get attached.
That's a valuable lesson, because I know I'm very guilty of needing it, whatever I just spent all those hours on, to be perfect. And a lot of that came from the need for publishing information. Like, there's only so much time you can put into an article that needs to be done by tomorrow. And if it doesn't come out right, you really don't have that article done. Right. So you get so consumed by the need for perfection, or the need for that time to have resulted in something, that I feel that just that lesson alone had to have been invaluable for you. And have you been able to take that lesson further along in your maker journey?
Oh, yeah, with pretty much everything. I think that, not thinking, I hadn't really thought of that until you said that, but probably why I just kind of jump in and do stuff. And I kind of think like, oh, we'll see if that works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. I'll do something else. And it's probably because of the glass stuff that I don't have a big attachment to the outcome of it, because to me, and the same with my knitting, I'm much more a process knitter than a project knitter, because I like the process of it. And if it doesn't work out, I just rip it out and do it again.
Oh my gosh, I would be devastated. I
Yeah,
have so much to learn from you.
it's it's very interesting because people say, what's the hardest thing to make? And the hardest thing to make is a round bead, in my opinion. Because, yeah, if you don't get that base, nothing's going to work right. So, yeah, I used to, yeah, beads are, now I went from that MAP gas torch to now I have an oxygen propane mixed torch.
But of course, as you've practiced, you've gotten better. It shows that it's really okay to start wherever you are and
Yeah.
and do with it whatever it is you intended to do with it, and it's really okay.
And once you do something a lot and you become better at it, you look back, like you're saying, you look back at those first things, you think, oh my gosh, I didn't do that very well. But then there's all these other people that have never tried it before, and they're amazed by your work. So take it and go with that.
Yeah.
You need to keep going for yourself, but yeah, just share the stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. I think like those two things right there are so huge. Even the fear of failure is so big in me that I know from experience that it's big in a lot of people, that some people just then don't try it because they're afraid to fail, because that would be, insert your horror story here. That's a huge piece, and wonderful that you were able to somehow, through encouragement or whatever it was, get over that. So let me stop there. Do you have any suggestions on how to face fear of failure to really finally embrace the fact that you just spent hours on something and nope, sorry, it's broken, start over?
I think when you are in this world of creating things, you have to love the process of creating it. Because if you don't, then you are going down a road that is not going to be very happy for you. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot of bumps and you're not going to enjoy it. So if you enjoy the process, then if something doesn't work out, you can go, okay, I'm going to try it again, but I'm going to do it this way now. So I think that is a huge thing too. You have to enjoy the process. And I also think you have to do you, and don't worry about what other people think, or because not everyone's going to like everything you do. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just in life. Mm-hmm. But there are people that will like what you do, and those people will find you if you continue to do it. And I think whatever you make, when you put yourself into it, then that just is more true, and your real people follow you and mm-hmm. find you. So
my story is similar in that I used to just give stuff away. Then you get to a point of either people ask you to make more and they're willing to pay you for it, or your husband, which I will say mine was in the same boat as yours, like, you really should charge for your time, or you paid a lot of money for those materials. You should at least get back some of your, your resources. So how did you face that? Like, how did you transition?
When my husband said, you really need to start charging for this, and people would offer money, offer to buy it from me, and I'm like, oh, no, just take it. And then finally I was like, okay, I want to do some other stuff, and I cannot afford, especially at the time when I was doing the gemstones, semi-precious gemstones and sterling silver. Yeah. I couldn't afford to just give that away. So I thought, okay, I started small, and it's just my local friends that are around. They would buy things for me. Or what I would do is I would go into, I don't think you can do this anymore, but I used to go into my kids' school. The teachers love jewelry. And I might give them something for Teachers Day or whatever. And then they would say, hey, will you bring your jewelry in? So I would have like little pop-up shops in the teacher's lounge. And then that went to friends would go, hey, can you come over to my house and do a little thing? So I kind of went there. And then things just kind of grew where I was like, I don't want to be carting everything around all the time. So I eventually got a website. And I did also on Facebook, like on my personal Facebook, I would say, hey, I'm doing this or that. And then there was a local shop here that would allow artists or makers to have a little space. And at that time, it's not open anymore, but it was like a community space, so they didn't charge us for anything. But so I did that. I haven't made jewelry for a long time. And I still have people, especially that live close by me, they'll contact me, hey, I need a birthday present. Can you make me a paper? Or can you make me this? Can you make me that? And I still do that, but yeah.
Sure. Well, that's wonderful. And those are really great examples of opportunities that are still in existence, just maybe navigating it a little differently because the rules of going into a school are different and,
right.
Different shops are hosting things in a different way. But you mentioned pop-up shops. I have to imagine that when you first did this, like that phrase didn't really even exist.
Right.
Right. You really made that phrase what it is. Like you were a prime early adopter to that concept, which
we would do that. It was fun.
That's wonderful.
It was
fun. That's great. And you so many of the words and your approach to things is always so refreshing to me. But it was fun. Like you said, it's fun. I'm in different groups and I know different people in different phases of business, and the stress and the pressure and the anxiety that they suffer through to achieve what you did. And you still say it was fun. Like, I love that. Like, you have this ability to approach a situation, no matter what it is, and really just make it seem so easy. It may not be, but you certainly come off as if it's so easy, and you're so like, and I love, we'll get to talking more about this, but the course that you're working on, you just keep navigating it. And as you learn something, you change it. You're not afraid to change. And that's also refreshing and so unusual in my world. Usually like you're heading down a path and you've got a plan and you've got this figured out. And then you're like, but wait, should I do? No, I can't. And you're just like, oh yeah, come on, everybody. All the changes. Come on, let's get on board. I'm going to change this up. Hey, it's like, it's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. I think what happens is I kind of have like an ADHD brain. So I'm not good with the plan. Well, I'm good with like the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do this, but the steps in between, I kind of have to come at them as I'll figure those out as I come to them for the most part. Now, I have to have a general idea of where I'm going, but, and I think one of the reasons why I'm like that is because in November 1st, 2012, I left my job, which I was in the dental field for 30 years. I left that to just do what I thought was going to be jewelry. And that was my first day of total self-employment. And a friend of mine called me and said, hey, let's go to lunch and celebrate. I'm like, okay. So we go and we were talking and she said, so what's your big plan you're going to do? And I said, well, I don't know. I've got some projects I would like to work on. One of them is my husband wanted me to I'd made some fish, glass fish. And he said, can you put them in something? So I had an idea to make like a aquarium that you didn't have to take care of, but there could be the glass fish in there. So I was telling her about that. She goes, okay, I would like to have one. Can I have it in 2 weeks? Because I'm changing. And I was like, I have not even figured out how to do that. She goes, well, you got all the time now. Do it.
Wow.
So I did. Um, so I figured it out, and I used copper and sheets of copper and made kelp, and then put glass fish on top of these wires that I soldered into pennies to attach to the bottom of a glass, and then covered them with sand. So it looked like fish were swimming. And it was right after Thanksgiving. I gave her her aquarium. She put it on her desk at work. And that year before Christmas, I had to make 30 of them. So it's just like, holy cow. Okay, maybe there's something for this. So then jewelry kind of went by the wayside because I did so much of that. And I did like 3 years worth of art shows. It's called Penrod. It's a big art show here in Indianapolis. And I got in my first try, which was amazing. And so I did that, I think, 3 years. So I think that being able to go, okay, let's change this. But because I like the process of it, and I don't care what I'm making, but if somebody's asking me for it, if several people are asking me for it, then yeah, let's see what happens. And then the same thing happened again in 2015. I was in a business group and somebody asked me if I would make little sheep charms that she could use as stitch markers. And so at that point, within 6 months, my whole business had changed to that because the demand was there. So I quit doing the aquariums. Plus, it got to where it was really hard to ship those. They were really delicate, and so I was kind of glad to be done with that. But yeah, it's just I go with the flow, kind of.
Yeah, and I think your experience is so opposite of what so many people struggle with. You go with the flow, you learn and you adapt. You are not afraid to fail. You're like, that's fine. I learned a lot. It broke. I can't use it. Like all of these things, like it's like you embody all the things that all of us wish we had maybe just one of. Like you have all of it.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, and so I guess for me, part of my question is like when you transition from making the aquariums to making the stitch markers, did you feel any identity shift? Did you have to change everything in your business? Hey.
Well, that has been a long road. So when I first started out with jewelry, my company was called Maudie's Handcrafted Jewelry. And after my mother-in-law, who also taught me to knit, but she was a big jewelry person. So when I went from making jewelry to the aquariums, I was like, I can't be Maudie's so I thought, okay, I'm going to change my business name to my name. That way, no matter what I do, it's me. So when I transitioned to that, I was like, okay, I've got aquariums and I've got some jewelry. So I sent out emails to everybody and people still followed me and all that good stuff. Then as I transitioned into the stitch markers, I told everybody that I would be stopping the aquariums, but please feel free to follow me if you like. I might have jewelry every once in a while. I still have some aquariums I'll be getting ready and kind of ease them into it. I struggled with having 2 websites. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I can't do that. It's too much for me. So then I stopped doing that and just like, here, this is all my glass.
Okay.
But in 2020, I decided I would do something. because that's what I do. In 2020, I took a class on how to do surface pattern design because that's always interested me. And my husband was going to retire at the beginning of next year, and that we could go travel. And I thought that would be something that it would be easy for us to travel with and things. So with that, I did have two separate entities. I had Ann Tudor Design and then Ann Tudor LLC, but I still connected them a little bit. But if somebody just wanted the designs, I could go there. And I've completely stopped that now. My, as you know, my husband passed in June, so I decided that I didn't need to continue with that, even though I enjoyed it. But so I just got into the making again.
Yeah.
Which gives me comfort.
Yes, and that's another big piece I think that you've helped me embrace a little more fully, is that the spirit of making, the process of making, is also very therapeutic. So do you want to share any of that? I certainly don't want to press you to get into that, but I feel
yeah, that's fine. Shortly after Mark passed, like I said, I'm a maker, so I was trying to do things, and I did a lot of drawing and painting, and I really like that, but I just fell back into knitting all the time. And that really has helped me a lot. That's my go-to. It soothes me, and then you get good stuff out of it when you're all done.
Yeah. Speaking of, if we could see all that you have on, it's just beautiful what you're wearing. And I've seen other designs of yours.
Yeah, normally I don't have a sweater and a scarf on, but I was cold this morning.
It's cold. No matter when you listen to this, just know today it's very cold.
Right.
Even though it's not officially winter, it's chilly. Oh my gosh. Well, it's wonderful. I know I certainly have not gone through the challenges of grief that you're processing through, but I know for me, going through even just the pandemic, knitting became something that was very grounding for me. It offered me so much tactile relief, and I didn't really ever put words to it, but I found that I was not making jewelry. I was not, like there were certain things that I had to do for work. There were certain things that I had to do that were a part of my commitments. But when I had free time, I was knitting. I was knitting. And I don't even know that I finished many things. Like I have a lot of projects in process. So for me, I guess maybe I'm a process person versus a finished person.
Yeah.
Like, I'll finish that, but I really just enjoyed working with the color. It's all about the color for me. Even though I love black and white, I think the color is also really so attractive and attracting for me. I don't know, like, what do you feel is your...
Oh, absolutely color.
Yeah.
Now, like I live in Speedway, Indiana, which is, I live three or four blocks from the Indianapolis 500. So black and white is a big thing around here. So I like the black and white, but color is my thing. I love seeing well, you can't see this, but I've got a lot of yarn behind me in all different colors. And in my studio, which is in my garage, I have rods and rods of colored glass. And that's just, I like the color.
Yeah.
So much.
That's what does it for me too.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, since we can see some of your yarn, do you organize by weight of yarn or by color, or how?
Weight.
Yeah. Okay. I know some people do it by color. How about your jewelry? When you were working with beads, how did you organize those?
Color.
Yeah.
Still have a few beads left. Well, I have more than a few. I have beads left. And I have them in little trays, but they're all by color, not by size. So, yeah.
Yep, my beads are definitely by color.
Yeah. And my husband would always make fun of me. He would say, "Oh, look at that blue." And I'm like, "That's not blue, that's truth." Or, "Look at this." And he goes, "Look at that red." And I go, "Honey, that is mauve. It is not red." And all this stuff. And he's like, "Whatever. I just can't."
Whatever.
He said, people only see a few colors and you see a whole lot. And I go, "Oh, lots of people see lots of colors. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you're not particularly attuned to all the colors, but that's
Right.
okay, you know."
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so that's a color I don't use, but all the other ones I like to, you know. But unlike polymer clay, which is so fun, I love polymer clay, is like you can't mix two colors of glass
Mhm.
and get a different shade. So that's kind of a bummer of it, but it's still really fun.
Yeah, it's
You'll
still beautiful.
you'll have to come and play in my studio someday.
Oh, I would love that. Oh my gosh, I would love that. If I could just walk out to my garage and melt glass, like I would be so happy. How
Yeah.
do you stay warm? Wait, how do you stay warm?
So I mentioned my dad used to restore antique cars. I live in my childhood home. In fact, we bought it from my parents years ago. And in one of the garages he had a furnace put in so he could work out there. So I have a furnace in the garage.
Oh, yes, I need to come visit and stay for um taking it as a serious business, there's there's a need to make and create, and you want to have a business and you want to have a logo and you want to have all these things, but you also need to make money to keep doing it. Is there any advice you can offer for people who want to do this and maybe they're just starting out, and because you've offered so many options and outlets for people to consider, how do you do it and ensure that you're making some money?
Pricing is really big. Um, you need to take into consideration things that you might not think about initially. One is the material cost. I mean, most people and like, yeah, it costs this much to do this. Secondly, is the time it takes for you to make them, all the packaging that goes into it. Those are all things that you need to figure out how those all work, because you could have something that you sold that is going gangbusters, and then at the end of the month or whatever you find out you didn't make any money because everything that you brought in went out some way. And I think people really need to get a grip on truly understanding what all is involved, and also like your website host or your email, all those things that you have to pay for. Also, your credit card processing, all that stuff needs to be accounted for. Then you make your price and make sure that you're not undervaluing yourself. Um, and if you find out that you've done all this and you realize that it is crazy expensive and probably will be hard to buy, then you need to figure out ways, if you want to continue with that, how you can reduce your costs and also how you can increase your perceived value of it. Right. Right.
So you really have to take your time and think about it, but at the same time I feel when you're first starting out, you also you yourself don't value as much of what you've created as you should. So it's a very hard thing, and I feel I don't mean to engender this, but I feel as women we tend to devalue our time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially if it started out as a hobby and now you're making it into a business, you're like, well, I would have been doing this anyway. Like, any thoughts you have there, given your experience?
One thing that I've come to learn, my husband made a comment to me one time. He was real supportive and he was always like, you need to do this, you need to charge more, da 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 da. And something he said was, okay, it might be easy for you. It doesn't mean it's easy for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, all right. So you have to value your knowledge and also realize that not everyone can do what you do. And nobody can do it the way you do because you're putting yourself into it. So you kind of have to get a different mindset where, yeah, you're valuable and your insights and your whatever you make is valuable. So you can't just give it away all the time.
And I think as I've gotten to know you better, I also understand you have people who help you reflect back on yourself. You have people you share information with who can then offer back feedback of suggestions on pricing or this or that. For people who maybe don't have that kind of network, are there ways and paths you have followed where you have just found the right people to help support you in the ways that you needed?
Yes, I think education is really important. I think, especially, well, two things. If you're a maker, to increase your skills is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And as a business owner, it's really important for you to increase your business acumen also. So I was fortunate enough to get into a business group that at the time when I was making aquariums, I was in a group that with a lot of yarn dyers and designers, knitwear designers, and all sorts of things. And that's how that kind of flipped for me. But just having the value of being able to have somebody to reflect off of or make suggestions to and make you think about things that you hadn't thought about before. And just like you and I met you through a business group. Mm-hmm. That is, or a course actually, that is, I think, key because those are like-minded people. They may not be doing your exact same thing, which is fine, which I think is a little better because that way you're not comparing, but they're still in the same space you are. And I think those are invaluable. And those are some of my best friends. It's funny, I've met people online that are business people also, especially in the fiber community, that, I mean, one of them, I went out to Washington State and spent a week with her. And we did a show together. And also, I'd never met her in real life.
Wow.
Before. But, you just meet these people. And I have other people that I just like, okay, yeah, these are my friends. So I think that is really important. And it doesn't, also something you can look at is in your local community. And find now online, you could look on your local Facebook groups. Are there people in certain industries or small business, chamber of commerce, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. And for all the things that people don't like about social media, I agree with you. I feel there are true values if you're looking for the right thing. And when you're in the process of evolving in your business, if that's, your direction, or even if you're just in it to be creative, the groups within your social media channels really are so valuable. And if you can weed through some of the stuff that maybe you don't appreciate, you really can find gold.
Absolutely.
Like I found you.
And I'm so glad.
Likewise. Oh my gosh. Well, and so we should get to it. Next evolution for Ann Tudor is this amazing course you've been working on. So we should really get to some of that. So you're doing your stitch markers, which you do on a regular basis. You have an amazing network of businesses you've been working with who have been buying your stitch markers for years. They are adorable. So please, anybody who's listening, you must see Ann's stitch markers if you were at all involved even in the jewelry world, because they would make fabulous charms for a bracelet or earrings, but they're amazing stitch markers. You were educating and you were sharing the passion that you have for knitting and trying to help encourage other people to pick up those needles.
So over the years, I have taught many people how to knit. And pretty much anybody that knows me, like that sees me in real life and online, know that I knit because it's everywhere. Um, so I have personally, in person, taught many people to knit and was in knitting groups and all this. And recently, I have had, over the past few years, many people contact me over social media and say, hey, I'm working on this. I'm having a trouble. Can you help me this? Hey, any suggestions for what I can make with this yarn? How do I do this? And it just, and I love answering everybody. A lot of times I'll shoot a quick video and send them a picture or send them a little video so they can have a little instruction. And then I thought, you know what? I need to make a course where I can share all my beginning knitting knowledge. So for all the things that I wish I had known when I first started out that I've kind of stumbled over and learned, like my very first sweater I started, I did not know what I was doing. My mother-in-law had taught me how to knit. She knit a lot of things. She and I picked out a pattern. I went to the yarn store by myself, and which was not a good idea. But I went to the yarn store by myself and didn't ask any questions because I thought, I don't want them to know I don't know anything. So I picked out this yarn and got home and I started to the bottom up sweater and I got probably 8 inches up. I was getting ready to do the sleeves. My husband goes, what are you knitting? I said, a sweater. He goes, for who? He said, for me? He said, I think it's a little big. It was 10 inches too big. It was ginormous. So I ripped it all out and I used cotton yarn.
Oh.
Which was way not the right yarn. So it just kind of grew and grew and grew. And so I unraveled all that and put it away and did not touch it for many years. And then I decided this is silly and I'm going to figure out how to do a sweater. And then now I love doing sweaters. But I want people to have an experience where they don't have to go through all that. So they can learn then how needles and yarn go together and how to read their knitting and how to fix mistakes and just all that good stuff. And make a couple things in the process with me guiding them with videos, step-by-step videos on exactly what you're going to do and what it should look like and all that. So that will be coming soon.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Well, so you've got the mini course and then you've got the full-blown coming to you soon course coming.
Yes. So I do have thank you. I forgot about the mini course. I do have a mini course where it will show you how to do the knit stitch, how to cast on very simply, and how to do the knit stitch. That way you get an idea, okay, is this something that I'm interested in doing? And then if it is, then you can go on to the full meal deal.
The full meal deal. I love it. Well, and I think what I love about the mini course is the even just the suggestions on where to find your needles and yarn, because it can be overwhelming, and also the suggestion of not starting out with the $33 skein of yarn, which we would probably all really love, but it's not the best use of that material when you're just learning. Even if it's the prettiest thing ever, it's not where you really want to spend your time, because that should be saved for when you're really ready. I think that's invaluable, and it's not something I certainly don't mean to take away from a yarn store, but they would love to sell that $33 skein of yarns. And I am that person. Like, I want to buy the best yarn because I want this to be the most amazing project ever. and then I'm like, oh, that was not a good idea. So I think
Yeah.
it's really good. And the way you present your information, you're so trustworthy. You come across to me as an expert and somebody who's really there to hold my hand and help me through the process. And I believe you, like I'm yeah. So I love your teaching style. I think the way you're presenting it is beautiful. It's inspiring. It's inviting. So I know you're going to be highly successful, and people will be really successful in learning from you. So I'm excited for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't want beginning knitters to buy that $33 skein of yarn. I have lots of those, and I've used lots of those, and they're wonderful, but they're not for when you first start out. And because it's precious then. It becomes precious. Where I want you to buy the inexpensive acrylic yarn because you don't have an attachment to it, and you can rip it out. It doesn't matter. And yeah, you'll have lots of time to go into the yarn stores
Yep.
and figure that out. I think that I'm going to make a video about going into a big box store
Perfect.
to show where the yarn is and what kind of yarn you can get there, and then go into I'm very fortunate. We have 2 local yarn stores nearby that are wonderful, to go in and do a tour of them and just show the differences.
Yeah. I think a tour of the local yarn store as well as the big box store would be so valuable for everybody, especially if it's a new thing. And you're approaching it as a beginner knitter, so I think that that's really going to be very helpful. Not everybody has a friend that can go into the store with them, and so that'll be the gift that you can give somebody who doesn't have that friend who is willing to make the time and hold their hand and not make them feel self-conscious about not knowing, because it is intimidating when you don't know something.
When you go into yarn stores, the people working there are really nice.
Of course.
Every once in a while, I have to say, in the past, not so much now, but in the past, it was almost like a club you had to belong to. It's not like that now, but I mean, people working there are very helpful too. But also, if you just don't want to ask anybody, if you're not comfortable, if you tend to be a little introverted or don't really want to ask, then, maybe that'll help people.
I think it will. Giving them that knowledge ahead of time and kind of what to expect and what to be aware of, and, maybe the right questions to be asking.
Right.
Or the answers that you want to know, should you be asked this X question, will be really helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got your mini course. You've got a big course coming. You're just going to now go do these amazing videos to help people feel the love of having Anne with you at your side, no matter where you are in the world. What else is coming up? What else are you working on?
Yes. I make the stitch markers, and I make them to order. So when an order's placed, then I make them. And I'm also helping a friend with designing some wallpaper for her bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm using all 3 of my things here, all 3 of my little pots of creativity. So,
I love it. I love it. Well, that's wonderful. And it keeps you busy. And I know as you're working through the holidays, this is your first holiday without your husband. That's also probably good to be busy doing something that's filling your heart a little.
Absolutely. Because it's much, and that's probably why I'm doing all this stuff. Instead of just one and the other, I'm throwing it all in.
And that's okay. That's okay. I think, because I think in life we all are facing some sort of challenge. And so knowing,
absolutely.
Yep. And just kind of find the strength to get up out of bed, do something and fill your heart with color in some way, whether it's jewelry or yarn or fabric or whatever it might be. It helps. It helps.
Yeah. You just got to get your hands into something, whether it be, like you say, all those things, or cooking or whatever.
Yep.
I think it's really important that we use our hands to physically do things.
Yeah.
And not just type on the keyboard or your phone.
Well, I can't wait to see all that you're doing, all that's coming off of those fingers and out of that amazingly creative brain of yours. I'm glad to be kind of on the sidelines watching and cheering for you and seeing it all come together. It's wonderful.
Well, you have been such a help creating all this, especially with the course stuff. So I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited about your podcast and what all is going to come from this.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited too, and I'm so excited to have you here. It's wonderful. So
I agree so much.
yes.
I'm in the Tammy fan club.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, it's wonderful to be on this journey and to have met you and to be able to cheer for each other. It's really been a blessing to me to know you. You've helped me through some things that, life just throws things at us, and it's nice to have somebody to help you through those times.
I just thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad to have been able to know you and get to know you a little bit more, and wish you so much success.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a mutual, what are they? So mutual admiration society. Yeah. So you are at AnnTudor.com, correct? Is that, and it's Tudor?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So clever. So clever are you. Well, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for sharing so much of your journey with our listeners. I think they will be able to have so many pieces of this that can help them on their path and, finding their level of success, whatever it might be, because your experience is so varied and so extensive that there's so much here to learn from. So thank you for being so willing to be a part of this and to share so much of you. It's just been wonderful.
Absolutely.
So,
anything I can do to help people.
Right. And I think that's the heart of what we do, is helping others, for sure.
Yes.
Yep. That's what gets us going. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ann. And thank you to all of you for joining us and tuning in. It's such a pleasure to meet people like Ann along my creative journey. And I hope that you have some takeaways from all that she shared today. There were some amazing things in here, as well as just an enjoyable conversation. So that's a wrap on another episode of Heart and Hands of a Maker. It's been so wonderful sharing this time with you. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want more, be sure to head over to TamaraHahnemann.com's podcast for show notes and more, as well as all of the information that Ann will be able to give us, so you can just easily click a link to her website. And to be sure you never miss an episode, click that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Ann. I really appreciate it.